following the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's departure from Bangladesh, the minorities, the Hindu minorities in Bangladesh have come under massive attack. There have been a number of these visuals and reports and information that has now been surfaced of numerous attacks on Hindu places of worship, on the properties across the country. There are several Hindus that have been killed, not to mention the two from the Awami League, the leaders of the Awami League party, which is the party who's headed by Sheikh Hasina. And these two leaders were Hindus and they have also been killed. These visuals on your screens on the left hand side show destruction of temples, the targeting of the Hindu homes and businesses. Hindus constitute about 8% of Bangladeshi population. There are as many as 170 million people, and this 8% population has been constantly dwindling over the past several decades, ever since Bangladesh got its independence in 1971. There is a report in Bangladesh's Daily Star which said that houses and business establishments of Hindus had been attacked. There were mobs and their valuables were looted in at least 27 districts. There was an ISKCON temple in Meherpur located in Khulna and a Kali temple which were also vandalized and then set on fire. There's yet another video that has showed that the temple in Navagraha Bari in Chittagong was burnt down. There are also reports that state that Hindu councillor Haradhan Roy of the Rangpur City Corporation and yet another councillor identified as Kajal Roy had been lynched. There's another video that is shared on social media that shows that there was a girl who was pleading for help. She was Hindu, and it is said and this has been reported from Pirojpur district. Moreover, the Bangladesh Hindu Buddhist Christian Unity Council has listed 54 attacks on temples, houses and establishments of Hindu community. These include the Indira Gandhi Culture Center, which promotes cultural exchange between India and Bangladesh as well. In fact, there is a very famous world-renowned Bangladeshi musician, Bangladeshi artist, whose house has been burnt down. He is incidentally Hindu. Joining me on the telecast is Radha Raman Das. He is the Vice President of ISKCON Kolkata. Radha Raman Das, the kind of horrific reports that we are at this point of time witnessing, getting to understand, there are reports pouring in that the Hindu community is again under attack in Bangladesh. How do you view, how do you think we should salvage the situation?
Situation is very, very bad there. I'm in touch with many devotees there, and they are saying that Muslims, they are spreading rumors against ISKCON also, and they are trying to instigate a mob to attack more other ISKCON temples also. Last night, one mob they came to one of our temple, but fortunately, in that area we have Hindu congregation. So everybody was there, like everybody came out from their homes and protected our temple. And then since this mob have fewer number than our devotees, so they went away. But we are getting a constant threat from them. Like they are writing on walls like ISKCON should be destroyed, things like that, which is very, very provocative. Yesterday also, devotees reported that this mob is going around and using loudspeaker. They are announcing that now Hindus, you are a guest in this country for a few days. And, you know, they are telling that you have to give hisab to us, things like that. Very, very provocative. Some of our brahmacharis has to hide in septic tanks and water tanks to save themselves. Yesterday night, when they attacked one of our temple, they bombed that temple hall. So all devotees, fortunately, they ran from back gate. So they spent whole night in a jungle, and then when in morning they come, everything was destroyed, completely destroyed.
That's unfortunate. Professor S.D. Muni, now an appeal that needs to be sent out to the interim Prime Minister of the country that has now been appointed by the President of Bangladesh, and Muhammad Yunus is the one who is in charge. It is quite apparent that there are Islamist extremists who have ensured that these protests became violent. There have been so many lives that have been taken away by these protesters or under the garb of being protesters. A number of these extremists from the Jamaat-e-Islami that have completely brought Bangladesh down with the destruction, with the violence, with the fires, with the homes that are being destroyed, properties that are being destroyed, vehicles that are being destroyed. How do we safeguard the Hindu population, the minorities, and can an appeal be made to the Prime Minister, Muhammad Yunus, to act on it on an immediate basis?
Well, Muhammad Yunus has just been named. He is still not in charge and control of the situation there, because they are in the process of forming interim government. And interim government will probably have all kind of elements. So I have a feeling that besides Muhammad Yunus, it is the responsibility of the security forces in Bangladesh and also police forces in Bangladesh. Unfortunately, there are extremist communal elements both in the army as also in the police. And they are conniving with a minority of extremists of Jamaat-e-Islami, who you must recall that have always been active since 1971 against minorities, Buddhists, Hindus, and even Christian community. That's why these three communities have formed a united council to protect their interests. I may also like to see this whole situation in a slightly broader perspective, because these extremist elements are attacking minorities, attacking Hindu temples, and also attacking Muslims and Awami League people. So, what they are trying to do is to uproot the democratic forces which are there in Bangladesh, secular forces which are there in Bangladesh, which Hasina had protected and strengthened. They want to finish them so that in future they do not face any ideological challenge, they do not face any political challenge. And this is a broader perspective in which we must look at the things, because there are people in Bangladesh, as our colleague from the Krishna movement just now said, who are also protecting temples. There are people who are protecting Hindus, their neighbors and all that. We must strengthen these civil society groups, and the students group which was for anti-discrimination, which has played a key role in appointing Muhammad Yunus as the Prime Minister. We must approach forces like that who are still committed to, they said they would not allow the fascists to take control of the Bangladesh situation. So through our diplomatic channels, through political channels, and through direct contacts within the army and security establishment and the civil society, we must try and make sure that no harm is done to the minority, no harm is done to the temples, and no harm is done to the democratic institutions and democratic forces there.
Okay, but Professor Muni, the situation that has panned out in the last few days, and in fact a few weeks, where hundreds and hundreds of these students have been killed, and this entire campaign of the students had been usurped by the Jamaat-e-Islami extremists. How else do you explain these protests to become so violent, keeping in mind that the judiciary which had passed the law had again been rolled back by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina? So there is a diabolical plot over here to cause a coup and allow for military rule to take over and remove Sheikh Hasina, who's now in exile, who's currently finding asylum, temporary asylum here in India. How do we tackle the situation? And having seen the precedent that has already been set, the Indian population, the Hindu population in Bangladesh was at a healthy rate in 1971. It has dwindled to shocking rates, and it at this point of time stands at 8%. And when we have an establishment which if I could, stick my neck out and say is pro-Jamaat-e-Islami or has elements from the Jamaat-e-Islami that are going to push for their agendas to allow for a political environment to be created as such for their accordance, for their beneficence, for their benefit, how do you ensure the Hindus are going to remain safe in Bangladesh?
Well, Indian government doesn't have all the power at this moment in Bangladesh to do as you are suggesting, because India stands isolated in today's Bangladesh because of our support to Hasina. Even during the protest movement, there was a lot of criticism of India. Not only that, even before the protest movements started, there was an India Out movement already launched by the Jamaat Islami and BNP.
Yeah.
So it's a political issue, and you are right that in the protest movement, the extremists had infiltrated into the students' movement earlier. And when students' movement's resolution was sought by Hasina and the students, as you said, through the court has said that now the quota should only be 5% or 3%. They brought it down, and the government accepted that. So for 3-4 days, there was some peace in Bangladesh. Hasina had even talked to the students' leaders, and then suddenly it erupted again. Now the second eruption had no camouflage of the students' quota issue. In the second eruption, there was only one demand, and the demand was that Hasina should be thrown out, which was outright political. And in that political demand, students were also together. Even Muhammad Yunus, in an interview, had said very clearly that the only solution is that Hasina should get out, and we should throw her out, and India should help us to see that she is no more in the commanding situation. So that is how the whole situation has unfolded. Now, what we can do is we do have political contacts, both in BJP, in BNP, and also in the military establishments. And through those contacts, we must ensure that in the interim government, the Jamaat-e-Islami elements do not get in and do not get dominant at all. It's easier said than done. I understand that, because we are working from a distance and we don't have a direct control. Even we had to take our own High Commission people out because there is a threat to them, and there is threat to all the Indian establishment, not only Indira Gandhi Cultural Center. I fear even business establishments where Indians have invested. Adani has invested a lot of money there. They may come under pressure and they may come under threat. So it's a bigger challenge to
Yeah.
see how to protect Indian stakes in a new Bangladesh. And the only way could be that the pro-Pakistani elements, the extremists, and the Chinese elements should be kept out of it.
Okay. Rashmi Samant, let's go back in history. In 1971, the liberation of Bangladesh, where there had been a massive army by Pakistan, which was supported by the United Kingdom and United States of America. But in turn, with the help of India and Russia, there was freedom that was granted to Bangladesh, which was heavily fought. There were huge exodus that had also taken place from East Bangladesh to West, from West Bangladesh to East Bangladesh, and so on and so forth. There has been a history of assassinations, of military coups that have been witnessed by Bangladeshi leaders in the past as well. In the latest coup that has been witnessed, in an interim government that has been formed, the fate of Hindus it hangs in the balance, and there have been certain proposals, suggestions, recommendations provided over here by Professor Muni, but as he said, the limited influence that India has currently on the new regime of Bangladesh, how do we solve this conundrum? Would it be sane advice to bring back all the Hindus to India? And if it were to be done, what could be the repercussions of it in terms of Bangladesh-India relationship?
Well, Megha, firstly, I think the Hindu population in Bangladesh has seen a steady decline since 1971. And the decline has been so steep that there has been an academic report from a university in Dhaka in Bangladesh, which, with figures suggested that in the next 30 years, there will be no Hindus left in Bangladesh. What is currently happening post the coup now in 2024 is that this process has been accelerated. There has always been animosity towards the Hindu population, and the sort of local population has always seen the Hindu population as other, and it has, targeted it time and again, right from the, Durga Puja a few years ago to now. So they've always been at the receiving end of targeted hatred in their own homes, somewhere where they've lived all of their lives. And I think it's a serious human rights concern. And as a neighbor, we here in India need to be able to intervene in a way that we secure the human rights of these people. And I think India has to approach intergovernmental organizations and put measures in place to rescue and to, provide asylum to the Hindu population that is currently stuck in Bangladesh. Institutions like ISKCON have done so much selfless work for community. In 2021, 2022, during COVID, they were the ones at the forefront who were distributing free food, irrespective of the religion of the people. They have really, really worked for the population of Bangladesh. But despite all that, for them to be treated this way, post-coup, for their brahmacharis having to hide in septic tanks to escape death, for their brahmacharis having been lynched in the Durga Puja, sort of massacre that happened a few years ago. It is a sign that there is deep-seated hatred against Hindus. So there is anti-Hindu bigotry, and that is something that is not going to go away. And the kind of political patronage that Sheikh Hasina extended towards the Hindu population, it wasn't all-encompassing. All she did was she delayed the decline in population. All the time, the population was still declining, but she was a better ruler in terms of what it meant for the Hindu population. But now, even that has gone away, and we don't have that patronage, that little bit of, leeway that we had before. I think it's time that the Hindu population, which is a huge chunk, it's a significant percentage. It's 9% of the Bangladeshi population. It's going to come under fire like no other time before in history. And they need to be relocated to, better places. And they are asylum seekers. The world needs to, focus on resettling them. Like the world has resettled refugees from Syria, from everywhere in the world. Europe has, taken them in. Today, India must take them in, and India must make this demand to intergovernmental organizations. And if anybody gets in the way, then it only reflects their anti-Hindu bigotry. Because that is what Hindus in Bangladesh are facing. And everything else is just a politically correct way to whitewash the realities on the ground.
Radha Raman Das, as Rashmi has rightly pointed out, that there needs to be now government support in allowing for Hindus to flee Bangladesh and be brought to India. It's easier said than done. And for how long can India take the burden of the persecution of Hindus that takes place in its neighboring Islamist countries, whether it is Bangladesh or Pakistan or Afghanistan? Should the rest of the world, the global powers like United States and United Kingdom also now come out and make public statements, who in fact are conspicuous for the lack of any sort of concern that they have raised in the public domain, as they come out in full strength when there are incidents of Islamophobia that take place in any part of the world?
It's very shocking that United Nations is completely mum when there is, so much Hindu being killed in Bangladesh, but not a single statement comes from these big organizations. In 2022 also, when during Durga Puja, Hindus were attacked, when we put pressure on United Nations, they just send one team and that's it. But they never come up with solution. But we have seen that a few years back when some of the churches' window panes were damaged, and the President of America comes and he raises that issues and make it a very big issue. But here, when thousands of devotees, when thousands of Hindus are being killed for so many years, nobody gave a damn about it. In 1971, 3 million Hindus were killed in Bangladesh. almost 4 lakh Hindu women were raped in 1971. But even we Hindus don't know about all this history and what has happened to our ancestors from Bangladesh and from Pakistan. So it is high time that Hindus should themselves, we should, put like whatever this wrong has been done to Hindu population, we have to raise it. We should not depend on others. Right now, the situation in Bangladesh is very, very critical. And what I am getting news from devotees there is that there is no police station. Police has ran away. Even the Bangladeshi police, they have declared siege work in Bangladesh. So practically there is no system there. Even a new government comes, but if there is no police station, there is no police personnel, then whom these people will look forward to for their safety. So there is a very, very grave concern there in Bangladesh, and the Indian government should consider all options so that this 1971 genocide is not repeated in 2024.
Professor Muni, why do you think there is a lack of, a sustained communication to be had, or speaking about it on public forum by global powers when it comes to the persecution, attack, exploitation of Hindus across the globe in the subcontinent? Do you think it's because of the small numbers of Hindus across the globe and practically no influence that we hold on global organizations like the Jewish community does across the globe, or for the kind of support that is garnered when it comes to incidents of Islamophobia that take place anywhere across the globe, for the global powers to come in our support and stand in our support?
See, the international institutions are not known for protecting human rights, no matter what they claim. You tell me, give me one good example of United Nations intervening to save people, or the kind of human right protection which they claim they should provide. There is no such example. The Gaza problem is just before us. The Ukraine problem is just before us. Before that, there have been so many other instances. And some of the big powers have been the most guilty ones so far as violation of human rights are concerned. So, rhetorics is on the one side, and the institutional capacity and institutional willpower to translate that rhetorics into practical action is a very different question. And I am not surprised that United Nations or any other world body is totally incapable of doing something. I think we have to work out locally in the local situations. You can make demands on the United Nations, you can call upon them, make statements, that's all very good. But when chips are down, you will have to work through the local bodies and local institutions. And I understand, yes, there is a total anarchy in Bangladesh at this stage. And the army and the government in Bangladesh, at least the president's office, knows this very well, that they have no control over the situation. That's why I see there are some drastic changes which have been brought about in the Bangladesh Army command structure and also Bangladesh Police command structure. Now that has been done this morning, so I don't know to what extent this would be effective. I think it will take time. And in the meanwhile, the extremists will have their way. So the best way is to invoke the civil society. As our ISKCON colleague told us, that at one stage all the community people came and therefore the rioters ran away.
Yeah.
Now that is the kind of a situation which can probably help.
Okay. All right. Rashmi, before I close this up, how do we tackle the situation right now? I like we spoke about how there needs to be a helping hand that has to be extended by the government of India. Is that the sole solution?
Well, Megha, I think when it comes to humanitarian efforts, there are no benefits that we can think of. It's only an exercise where you give. for the betterment of humanity. And I think the Hindus have nowhere else to look. Where do the Hindus of Bangladesh look towards? Do they look towards Pakistan? Do they look towards China? Do they look towards Nepal or Bhutan? They can't look towards these countries, or even Myanmar. For that matter, India is the only neighbor who's in any sort of position to help them. And it's a country where if they do end up coming to, they will not be further persecuted on religious lines. Everywhere else, the persecution is only going to continue. So I think that is something that we need to realize. It is the harsh reality of the time, and it's going to be a burden on the, it's going to be a burden on the economy. It's going to be a burden on the country. But I mean, they have nowhere else to go. And I think, end of the day, a humanitarian effort consists of these kinds of selfless, sacrifices and acts. And I think that's what makes India very special. We were the only people to, grant asylum to never persecute the Jewish people when they needed our help the most. We're known for it. And when we can do it for every other population, why can't we do it for Hindus who are indigenous to this land?
Yeah.
I think it's the least that we owe to them. And I really hope that the Indian government puts in measures to officially resettle persecuted Hindus in Bharat post this coup in Bangladesh.
And why not just in India? You have so many nations which are allies of India, which are friends of India, and they can open doors. As has been the case, like you rightly mentioned, from Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq, they've all been, the persecuted minorities have all been granted asylum and citizenships in different parts of the world, in smaller percentages. So why can't such a stratagem be planned for Hindus, whether they are in Bangladesh or Afghanistan, or for that matter in Maldives right now? Okay, all right. We've had a good, insightful conversation on this very complicated, complex subject. And I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.